Hello and welcome to Squared Circle Radio, the show that is for the fans, by the fans. I'm your phenomenal host, Mr. Podcaster Chris Belcher. That is the young buck, Mr. Andy York. We are coming to you a little differently tonight on a Monday. Yes, we are after Monday Night Raw. No, we're technically not live. We're recording this a couple of days early, Andy, because Thanksgiving week is always a busy week with Survivor Series coming up. We want to make sure that we had proper time to preview this, not rush it, not do anything like that. So, Andy, here we are a little bit early, making sure we get this in.
Yeah, a little bit early with as of right now, as of when we're recording this, a hopefully incomplete card.
Right.
Unless they're expecting the two War Games matches to be like an hour and a half long each, which wouldn't put it past them.
Right.
Yeah, it's been a weird build to Survivor Series, but it's gonna be a lot of fun to talk about it.
Yeah, it's definitely been a really weird build. We're going to get into it in just a minute. Before we do, make sure that you like this video. That's the thumbs up button. That helps the algorithm. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Please, please, please do that. That helps us so much and does not cost you a thing. Leave us a comment below. We try to respond to each and every one of those. Please make sure that you do that. And again, if you're listening on podcast, follow on whatever platform that you are listening on. All right, Andy, as I said, we're recording this technically before Monday Night Raw has even happened, so it's even before Monday, but that gives us a chance to talk about some Friday Night SmackDown stuff that we normally don't get to on the regular podcast. So we'll preview Survivor Series in just a second. Let's hit, one of my favorite segments that I think I have seen in a long, long time from Friday Night SmackDown. And it was finally this face-to-face interaction between Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens. Man, oh my goodness, I was so pumped when this happened. I was ready to run through a wall for these guys. What a promo between them.
Yeah, it was a fantastic promo between these two guys. A moment we've been waiting for, it seems like, since Bad Blood. We haven't
Yes.
really got anything like this. So it was fantastic back and forth. It really showed both guys' ability to cut a promo, and how great both guys really are at it. I think that's something that we know how good Cody is, but I think it's something that a lot of people overlook when it comes to Kevin Owens, and he can cut an emotional, coherent promo, and that's what he did Friday. It was really good. I like the story between both guys because you can see where both guys are coming from.
Yes.
Which the bet we've said all the times, multiple times on here, the best heel is the one that has some truth to what they're saying.
Yep.
And real honestly, like everything Kevin Owens says is like, yeah, that's 100% true. Like there is
Yep.
nothing that you are saying that is wrong right now. So yeah, it was a fantastic promo between the two of them. It makes me think that, again, we're recording this after Monday, or recording this before Monday, so it could be announced. It makes me think this has to happen at Survivor Series. Or at least at Saturday Night Main Event. I think it happens both times. I think we get two matches, and I think they happen in the next two big shows that we're going to get.
It could be really interesting. We know that they taped an episode of Friday Night SmackDown following this past Friday so the wrestlers could have the Thanksgiving holiday off. So we'll reveal a few spoilers that have to do with some immediate Survivor Series impact. But from what I read, Andy, Cody Rhodes wrestles Carmelo Hayes on that show, but I didn't see anything about Kevin Owens. So I assume there's not anything unless there's a video package that they just didn't show live. Very possible. Like you said on Monday, something could be announced. We'll speculate that in just a minute. But man, I'll circle back to this promo. You were talking about Kevin Owens spitting truth on this. How about Cody Rhodes saying that Kevin Owens is Kevin Owens' own worst enemy? He's the one that gets in his way all the time and is self-sabotaging his career. And Cody said, no, I don't think you hate me. I think you hate yourself. I mean, dude, you came away from that promo saying, yeah, man, everything Kevin said is so true. Yeah, you can see where he's coming from. Man, could you not see where Cody Rhodes was coming from in this?
Yeah, I mean that's the fun part about this feud right now is both guys are 100% true in what they're saying, and both guys have a valid reason for being in the position that they're in and being upset about what each other has done. Um, I really have enjoyed this story about and where it's going and where everything is heading, and I'm really starting to enjoy, or like I'm really going to enjoy when Randy Orton gets back involved again, because I could see him going after Kevin Owens, and I could also see him going after Cody, depending on how this whole story thing plays out. But yeah, it's a wild story, and it's something that I'm glad is happening, taking Cody out of the Bloodline storyline for a while again, and
Yes.
kind of putting him in his own bubble and his own story, while still being connected, because it's all Roman Reigns' fault that these two guys now hate each other. So it's just like it's everything is weaving together perfectly, I feel like, on SmackDown.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, we talked about how it's sometimes it's okay to tell a couple of stories at once, but I think we've speculated for so long that Cody Rhodes has to be the fifth man for the Bloodline team for War Games, but this is a clear and obvious way to get him out of it because he's so emotionally tied to this Randy Orton situation. And now he's so passionately driven with this Kevin Owens, everything that Kevin Owens has done. Man, I'm telling you, this could be the most passionate, emotional promo that Cody Rhodes has had since the night after WrestleMania 38, when he came out and, talked about his dad and this, that, and the other. This could be his not just most passionate, but best promo since then. We talked about how we need to see this extra gear from Cody, this other side to this white meat babyface. We need to see him fired up. And one could make the argument, Andy, that he was no more fired up at any point in time in the last 3 years than he was on Friday night against Kevin Owens. So that makes me really excited for when this match actually does happen.
Yeah, and it's something that I've started, like, I think everybody's noticed at this point. But when Cody comes out to cut a promo and he's not in a suit and tie, something's about to happen. Like,
Yes.
things are going
And
down. He's
it's
ready
2
for a
weeks,
fight.
2 weeks in a row he's done it.
Yeah. So, I really like that aspect of it. I'm really curious to see how this all plays out, because I mean, there is a scenario where Kevin Owens walks out as champ.
Agreed.
And I think that's a real possibility, and a possibility that, I think most fans would be fine with, because I think everybody's been clamoring for a KO title run again, because it's been
Mhm.
way too long.
Mhm.
But I again love the passion that both of these guys have had in this promo, and in this entire storyline. It's we're getting back to the version of Kevin Owens that everybody knows and loves, and that's
Yes.
this sadistic, evil heel Kevin Owens. So I am all on board for everything that took place.
Yeah, for sure. I am as well. Let's talk about somebody else that we're starting to get back to the sadistic version that everybody knows and loves. And that is this guy right here, Tommaso Ciampa. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, you see this look on Ciampa's face that one could argue we haven't seen since 2018 when he first became the Blackheart in NXT. Yes, he came to the ring this past Friday to the DIY music, but Andy, it was that slow, methodical, psycho killer walk that Tommaso Ciampa has, only to have him rolled up and defeated by Montez Ford in a fantastic finishing sequence. And then we saw last week Tommaso pushed Johnny Gargano down in frustration. This week, he did it again, saying, "Whose team are you on?" Andy, it was just a wild sequence with Tommaso Ciampa and DIY, Motor City Machine Gun, Street Profits, the tag team division on SmackDown.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of ways that they can go with this, but I think I speak for a lot of wrestling fans when I said thank God for heel Tommaso Ciampa, because he is, again, like we talked about with Kevin Owens, a sadistic man.
Yes.
And goes to every limit he can, and I think that's absolutely where he needs to be. I think this could be the push that gets him back to, or gets him to a main event level on SmackDown, which I'm
Mhm.
all for that, to see that. Where I ultimately, though, think this all plays out is I think we get a heel DIY. Like, I think Johnny turns two,
Ah,
and we get a heel DIY against Motor City Machine Gun, and then that can lead to the eventual split between DIY again, and we build to a proper Johnny Gargano versus Tommaso Ciampa.
See, I don't know how I feel about that because on one hand, I 100% see your point. because I don't necessarily think this is the split that we need between Johnny and Ciampa when that eventually does happen, because it doesn't mean as much yet. We're not invested enough in this friendship from a main roster perspective than we were in NXT. So the turn doesn't mean as much yet. On the other hand, a heel Johnny Gargano, Andy, is just, he was fine in the way, because I think because he had Candace and he had Indy and he had Austin Theory with him, and also Dexter Lumis. So I think the cheesy, corny, funny heel worked. I just don't know how that's going to work with Ciampa on the main roster. I just ultimately don't see Johnny as that heel like Ciampa is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think there is a place for him to be the goofy version of himself as a heel and let Champa be the killer. Because then that again can play into the ultimate, breakup between these two guys of, Champa being the guy that's always being serious or is the actual threat and Johnny's not. Plus, we've seen Candace start to slowly turn heel as well. And, going into war games, I think there's a real chance that we get a heel the way back on SmackDown. I think you could break off Austin Theory and Grayson Waller, or even add them to it. But I honestly I don't see. I think a heel DIY for a while will better the story for them than breaking them up right now and automatically having Tommaso go into the dark heel side without Johnny.
We saw a really, I don't even count this, but I bring it up just because we have to acknowledge history, because we are in that era where we acknowledge
It
history.
matters.
It does. It matters for sure. 2019, we saw a very, very short heel DIY run on the main roster when Gargano was the North American champion. Ciampa was the NXT champion. Ultimately, Ciampa's injury affected the way that story played out. Johnny Gargano finally won the NXT title, blah, 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 blah. We know that. But that's the only heel version of DIY, Andy, that I think we've ever seen. Correct me if I'm wrong. So there's a lot of different ways they can go with it. I'm not closing the door on the idea yet, Andy, but you know how big, and I know you are as well, big fans of Johnny Gargano that we are. I don't know. Here's my problem, Andy. Johnny Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa, to me, my opinion, is one of the best feuds in WWE history, not just NXT, WWE history. It hit a home run, a grand slam on every single level in NXT. And I know you don't like the cinematic match. I'm not saying it was a perfect end to the feud, but I loved it. I thought it was great. Yes, that was a heel Gargano in that. Okay, fine. I just want them both to succeed so bad that I don't want this heel run as a tag team to water that down and have people be like, oh, I was starting to get invested in them, and I just can't see that. I can't take Gargano seriously as a heel. Ciampa, we know, can prove it. Can Gargano prove it?
Yeah, that's a really big question that we haven't had answered yet, but I think it's a question that you can't answer until you do it and see what happens. And
That's true. Yeah.
again, if anybody is able to navigate through that system and find a way for Johnny to be an effective heel, I think it's Triple H. And so I I think it's a great direction to go in. I don't think it's a long-term direction, and I don't think it happens for a long time, but I do think it is something that they will probably start to explore. Because again, for all of those that are NXT fans, black and gold NXT fans, they know the story. They get the story between these two guys. But you have to make the main roster crowd and the main roster fans actually care about these two guys in that way. And so it's starting to, they have started to pick up a lot of momentum over the last couple of months. I don't know if it's the time to pull the trigger right away. I think you can keep this back and forth of interfighting between the two of them before either they split or you fully turn them both heel or whatever the case is. But I think that's probably the most likely scenario for me is both guys going heel for a couple months, and then WrestleMania next year is when we really start to build to Gargano Ciampa.
Yeah, we'll have to see. how long it takes to get there. I think you're right. Probably not this year, probably next year. But in any event, you're right. That's probably the direction that we are headed. Let's talk about another heel on the roster, one that we really didn't talk about last week, Andy. I'm kind of surprised. We might have mentioned it, and I'm just forgetting that we mentioned it, but I know we didn't dive into it, and that is the return of Shinsuke Nakamura with this brand new, really embracing a samurai type look, targeting LA Knight, the United States champion. Um, the last time we saw Shinsuke Nakamura, or at least the last time of note, he was feuding with Cody Rhodes. And I don't remember a whole lot of what he did after that, if he did anything after that.
Yep.
But here we are targeting the United States champion LA Knight. What do you make of the return of Shinsuke in this new look?
I'm all for it. The more Shinsuke we get, the better. I love Shinsuke. I think, trying to recapture that NXT, but going back to NXT, that NXT Shinsuke Nakamura, I think is
Yeah,
very important. I think if he does not walk out with the U.S. title in this feud, he's not going to be in the company for much longer.
I agree.
Which is why I'm begging them to please put the U.S. title on him. And everybody knows how big of a LA Knight fan I am. I love LA Knight. I need to see Shinsuke Nakamura be taken seriously on the main roster.
Mm-hmm.
He has not recovered from the AJ feud. He has not recovered
Correct.
from the Jinder Mahal feud. And that, we're talking about a guy that beat John Cena clean in the middle of the ring, and nothing has really happened for his career since. And we're talking about a Royal Rumble winner. Like we're talking about a guy that should be a bigger deal than he is. And he doesn't have much. I mean, he's older. He's up in age, so he doesn't have a long time left to really get a lot of these opportunities. So I would love to see him walk out with the U.S. Championship. I would love to see him get elevated to a point where he is in a world title contention again.
Mm-hmm.
But if he does not walk out with the U.S. title at some point in this feud, I don't think he's in the company for much longer, which is, I hate to say it.
Yeah. I mean, you have to think that people do remember recent history, and his feud with Cody Rhodes was good. They did some good things and made him feel like a true threat. But like you said, we need him to be United States champion. Plus, we need LA Knight to be freed up to go over to Monday Night Raw on Netflix. At
Yeah.
the beginning of the year, I've been saying that's the transition that he needs. So move him over there, and that gives him the shot to go after Gunther or whoever the world champion might be. But very interesting return with Shinsuke Nakamura. All right, something that we didn't dive into a whole lot. I know we mentioned it last week. Again, there's just so much going on that we don't have a whole lot of time to get to everything. That is the Women's United States Championship Tournament. 4 triple threat matches comprise the first round, and then you have semifinal matches. We'll show that bracket in just a second after we talk about the winner of the triple threat match from last Friday, my favorite and yours, Chelsea Green, picking up the win over Bianca Belair and Blair Davenport. And now I will show you the bracket. It looks like this. Chelsea Green and Bayley have both advanced. We will see them face in the semifinals. And then we have another match next week that is Piper Niven, Michin, and the injured Jade Cargill got replaced by who do you remember? Lash Legend.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert for everybody. Don't remember who. I think was it Michin that won this
I think so.
triple threat. Regardless, you'll find out next Friday, and then Naomi, Tiffany Stratton, and Elektra Lopez in the other one. So, what are your thoughts? Obviously, you and I lean towards Chelsea winning this. It's a great spot for her. But first of all, I expected Bayley and Chelsea to be the finals, and that would be a Chelsea win. But on the it's the semifinals. So, how do you see all this playing out?
Yeah, I think Chelsea going up against Bayley is intentional because I think that Bayley, we're kind of reaching into other stories, so I'll be very vague about it in a way. But I think Bayley gets added to the War Games team. And
Yes,
then that's the way that Chelsea beating her is that excuse of she, was going through War Games and everything else. Here comes Chelsea, gets the
sure.
win, moves forward. I honestly think this ends in a rematch of something we saw in Nashville, which is Chelsea Green versus Michin for the U.S. title.
Okay.
And I think that brings back the callback to that feud between the two of them, but also gives Chelsea her win back, gives her the U.S. title. But I think that's how this plays out. And I think this is also going to play into who really attacked Jade Cargill. I think we're going to get to that answer too in the middle of this bracket as well. So I love tournaments. I love any kind of tournament, whether it's basketball, whether it's in wrestling, whatever it is. So I'm all for this kind of thing. I think we need more tournaments in wrestling, to be real honest with you. But I'm excited to see how this all plays out.
All right, so I'm throwing the bracket back up on your YouTube screen if you're watching the video version of this show. If you're not watching the video and you're only on podcast, please do yourself a favor. Go over to the YouTube channel, check out the video, hit the subscribe button. We would appreciate it. I'm throwing the bracket up again because, Andy, you said Michin versus Chelsea, revisiting that feud for the Women's United States Championship. I have a problem with that, and I'm going to try to be careful in the words that I use to describe this. However, I can't think of too many other words, so I'm just going to have to say this. I think that match doesn't make the Women's U.S. Championship feel as important as it should. Because I just feel like they need big time stars. You know what I mean? That's why I expected Bayley and Chelsea. So I think the only big time star matchup we have left would be Naomi and Chelsea. So this is the first women's mid-card championship that we've ever seen, and I just want it to feel as important as it should. And Michin versus Chelsea, I think, puts it behind the 8 ball.
Yeah. And I get that as well, but also we've talked about how this title is to build up the mid card. And so, I mean, you don't have your picture of the mid card to me is Chelsea Green and Michin, especially on SmackDown. So I think that builds it up and shows how important this title is, that these two mid carders who haven't got a lot of opportunity and haven't had a lot of success have fought there and clawed their way to get to this championship, to be the first one, to make it mean something, to make it feel important. I agree. I think, honestly, I think Chelsea Green is a shoo-in for one spot. I think Naomi is a great choice for the other one, especially playing into the Jade Cargill story of, who really attacked her and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I get what you're saying. I kind of agree, but I also am for a mid-card title being represented by the people that have been in the mid-card the most, and really trying to make that title feel important to these type of characters like a Chelsea Green or a Michin.
Yeah, I think it can go both ways. I always I go back to things like Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns holding the Intercontinental Championship, or John Cena holding the U.S. Championship. I always like the bigger stars holding the mid-card title. It just, because they always do so well with it. So I think Chelsea's obviously a star. She doesn't need a title for people to see that. But maybe with a title, people will recognize it a little more. We'll have to see. I'm just ready for the full-on Uncle Sam Chelsea gimmick whenever she wins the championship. Yes. It's going to be fantastic. Appreciate you guys being with us on this Survivor Series preview edition. We're going to preview the show. Before we get there, let's hear a little word from our friends over at SportsWire Radio.
Looking for all the latest happenings in the world of sports and wrestling? Well, you're in luck, because SportsWire Radio has you covered 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 365 days a year. With great shows in the world of sports, such as the Pinstripe Chronicles, hosted by Uncle Tats, Donald Stewart, and Rob Barrows. New York Baseball Talk with Chris Bazaya and Rob Maraska. The Liftoff Jets, also hosted by Chris Bazaya and Sharman Phillip. Neil Villapiano and the Devil's State of Mind. Randy Dillon's Hockey Fan Chat. In the world of wrestling, SportsWire Radio has you covered with Squared Circle Radio, featuring Chris Belcher, Andy York, and Jared Justice. Those sit-down marks with DB, Primo, AJ, and Michael. A work in progress, featuring the Mayor of Canton, Piles, and Glenn Abbott. You can catch all of these great shows and more anytime anytime, anywhere, and any place via the Listen Live button on SportsWireRadio.org. And you can also catch SportsWire Radio anytime on YouTube at SportsWire Radio 6579 to catch all the latest happenings in the world of wrestling. SportsWire Radio has you covered. It's all sports matters and all wrestling matters here on SportsWire Radio. I am your host, the owner of SportsWire Radio, the #1 global radio station, the owner of the Promo Wrestling Federation, and one of the owners of the Pride Wrestling Federation, your voice, figuratively and literally, where all wrestling matters, the Reverend Tom Bryce.
Tom Bryce, what a cool dude. I love that dude so much. I appreciate his support. All the guys over at SportsWire that he listed on that commercial. If you're not tuned into SportsWire Radio, he just gave you every single reason to do that. Make sure you do it. SportsWireRadio.org. Hit that listen live button to keep up with all the great content. Andy, as we said at the top of the show, we only have 3 confirmed matches as of recording, but that's not going to stop us from previewing Survivor Series, the 5th of the Big 5 or the 4th of the Big 4, depending on how you want to phrase it. But one of WWE's staple pay-per-views every single year. There you see the official poster. We thought for the longest time that the men's War Games match was going to be 4-on-4. We get the addition of Bronson Reed recently. And then, Andy, we just don't know what we're going to do with the 5th man on the OG Bloodline side. We know the phone got disconnected last week, but at the end of SmackDown, we famously hear the ladies and gentlemen, Paul Heyman appears in person. He says it's going to be 5-on-5. Who's the 5th? But CM Punk, the original Paul Heyman guy. Andy, there are so many directions that we need to go with this, but I have to ask you first because you said some things on the podcast last week that you had to make a tweet about on Friday after SmackDown and said, I take it all back. I'm in. So, as the CM Punk purist, how do we feel?
So sitting there Friday when Heyman came out and was cutting the promo and everything, I still did not know who it was going to be. Like I wasn't convinced it was Punk. I didn't know. Part of me thought maybe it was The Rock when he started talking.
I thought the same thing. I thought Rock for a minute.
And then you hear the intro to Punk's music and the place exploded. I mean, the place absolutely went off. And I'm sitting there watching this as he comes down to the ring with his taping up his wrist, which I love that aspect of it. Slides into the ring, immediately starts brawling. Everything happens. And the moment that it clicked for me was not only just the pop of the crowd, but was this moment right here was when Roman and Punk were standing face to face in the middle of the ring.
I'll throw that back up. My bad.
There you go. After everything else cleared, you see these two guys standing face to face and the crowd is just going crazy.
Yep.
And that's when I was like, nope, I get it. Like, I absolutely get it. And then the thing that WWE, especially with Roman, and I talk about it every chance I can, that they do a fantastic job of, is cutting promos without mics.
Yes.
Because if you can read their lips in this segment, Roman says, what are you doing here? And Punk says, I'm not here for you. This isn't about me and you. This is about him. And Roman then replies and says, he's my wise man. And Punk says, we'll see. So there's just a lot of like little details, little connections. And I got to really thinking about it too. And I've seen a lot of people post this on Twitter as well. Punk makes more sense than Rollins because of the Paul Heyman aspect of it.
Of course. Yep.
Like the new bloodline putting Paul through a table would absolutely make Punk mad enough to join this team.
Mm-hmm.
And also the things that happened on SmackDown when Punk came out and Paul Heyman was there and the bloodline came out and everything like that. Like that moment alone made all of this full circle once again.
Yep.
I think this happens at Survivor Series. We're going to get this. I think we're heading to a Punk Roman feud probably at SummerSlam next year, which sign me up for that because there's a lot of history there. But yeah, it's seeing it happen and seeing it before my eyes. It clicked and I'm all in. Like I am, no pun intended. I'm all in on Punk being the fifth man in the OG Bloodline.
Yeah, when Paul was when he was cutting his promo and he was saying, the 4-on-5 doesn't add up to me or whatever. He actually said commute to me, but he should have said compute, but it is what it is.
Through a table.
But
He's gone through a lot.
it's fine. He said he's a little messed up. But as he's saying all this, the two names that ran through my head was Punk and Brock. I in my head, I'm like, is this the moment Brock Lesnar is coming back? There was that weighed in my head more than CM Punk, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, it's Punk.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to convince myself, oh my goodness, it's Brock. Oh my goodness, it's Brock. But either would have made sense. I'm glad it's Punk because you're right. The moment you're referring to was the SmackDown in Chicago where Punk comes out, the Bloodline interrupts him. Paul Heyman says, no, not so fast. There were two things that Roman Reigns ordered before he left. One was to soften up Cody Rhodes, not hurt Cody or not take Cody Rhodes out, but just soften him up. The second thing was that nobody lays a finger on CM Punk as a favor to the wise man. So all of it comes back full circle. That's why Punk makes sense. You're absolutely right. He's doing it for Heyman. Now, where we go after this, as far as the immediate relationship between Punk and Heyman and Roman and the three of them, I don't know. There's lots of speculation as to this is probably just a one-off OG Bloodline reunion. We know the momentum that Jey Uso is on. We would like to see him bring Jimmy along with him and give Jimmy some of that rub, even though Jimmy is popular as well, nowhere near what Jey is. We know Roman is going to continue to have his issues with the Bloodline and all those kind of things. So who knows where we're going to go after this, but it makes a lot of sense. You mentioned Roman and Punk maybe at SummerSlam next year. Well, in between that's WrestleMania, and this makes an even bigger case for Punk versus Rollins this year at WrestleMania, because Rollins was adamant that he was not going to team with Roman Reigns. In fact, he said, Sammy, I don't know why you're still dealing with him. Jimmy, it makes sense because it's family. Jey, it makes sense because it's family. What's he going to say to CM Punk? You did it just because I didn't do it, or you did it in spite of me. I can't believe you aligned yourself with Roman Reigns. I thought it was bad enough that Cody did it, and now you're going to do it. Oh, Andy, we're building this story as if it didn't need a build already. Now we're really building it.
Yeah, there's so much history here between Punk and Rollins and Punk and Roman and Rollins. Like there's so much stuff that they can pull from to make all of these feuds that we're getting ready to get at some point within the next year or so or 2 years mean just so much more. And so I that's one of the other first things I thought about was this is going to add more fuel to the fire of Seth Rollins and CM Punk. I tell you what I would love to have happen is, and I know they don't do press conferences anymore as much, but I would love full circle 1 year later, backstage after War Games is over, we get an all-out brawl, all-in brawl of CM Punk and Seth Rollins. Worked, so just so everybody knows, a worked brawl between the two, and it's just a pull apart. They just are throwing haymakers at each other, like going back and forth at each other. I'm fine if we get 3 matches out of this series with Punk and Rollins. And I'm selfish.
Yeah, we better get 3 matches out of this
and
series.
I'm selfish, and I know that. I would love Punk Rollins at Rumble. Please give me Punk Rollins 1 at Rumble because that would be amazing. You can do the second one at Elimination Chamber and then do the main one at WrestleMania as well. This is adding more intrigue to that. It's adding more intrigue to whenever Punk and Roman lock up, because that is absolutely going to happen at some point. It's just crazy that within the last 3 years, that Punk is going to go into a major feud with all 3 members of the Shield at one point or another.
Yeah.
And like be prominent in everything that they do, because that happened with Mox and AEW. That's going to be the premier feud of probably Netflix to kick off, will be Punk Rollins. And then whenever Punk and Roman decide to go at it, it's just going to be, massive as well. So it's a crazy time. It's a wild time. And, again, I take everything back I said last week. I am all in on Punk. Punk makes more sense to me than looking at it. Punk makes more sense to me than Rollins or Cody in some ways. So I'm all on board.
It's interesting that you keep alluding to the AEW stuff with Punk, because you see the reason that he left AEW is because he wasn't wanted there anymore, for lack of a better word, because of the backstage issues. Let's just call them that, with the Elite and with Tony Khan and with Jack Perry and whomever. Doesn't matter. The point that I'm trying to make is I think it's hilarious that he had to leave AEW because of all of those circumstances. And the first thing he does when he comes to WWE is feud with guys that he doesn't get along with personally. It's so wild the way that the first thing that I read, somebody tweeted that today. I'm not going to take full credit for that. Obviously you mentioned it as well. But the first thing that I thought of, Andy, when I read that tweet was Edge Matt Hardy 2005. I listened to Bruce Pritchard's podcast that he did a couple of years back, just laying that whole feud out. And it was like, I got those guys together. They were uncomfortable with the situation, but they knew that there was money to be printed and that we were going to do great business, and they were good with personal feelings aside. And Andy, you could argue that's the feud that put Edge on the map and made him the superstar that he is, because that happened. Punk and Roman and Rollins, they're all on the map, so it's not going to do that for them. But just look at the Punk Drew feud from last year, feud of the year in 2024. What are they going to do in 2025? Oh, let's just put Rollins with him. And maybe towards the end of 2025, 26, let's put Roman with him. And then CM Punk can retire a happy man.
I mean, listen, it goes to show that money talks. Like, money talks over everything else.
Yep. And
money between Punk and Drew, like we talked about.
Yep.
Not only is that like the feud of the year, but all 3 matches, even the SummerSlam match with Seth wasn't the greatest.
Sure.
But the storylines going into it and everything else to build to that Hell in a Cell match, which is one of the best Hell in a Cell matches of all time. Definitely the best Hell in a Cell match of the last decade, it feels like. Just going out there and doing stuff like that. You're building and you're making money by doing this, by putting your personal issues aside, and you're going out there and you're airing it all out in front of everybody, because that's what good TV is. Yep. And that's what Punk and Drew did. And if you think Punk and Drew had ammo on each other, we've barely even skimmed the surface of Punk Rollins.
I know.
Barely even skimmed the surface of it.
I know, man.
And so it's crazy to go back and think about all the stuff that they can pull, because in storyline perspective, Roman and Seth got their big break because of CM Punk quote unquote bringing them in to be his Shield. So it all, storyline wise, it all goes full circle. Real life personal issues, it all goes full circle. And it's going to be it's going to be can't miss TV, and I'm so glad it's going to be on Netflix, because it's going to be absolutely wild when they start doing it.
Yeah, unhinged is probably the best word that I can think of when they do this on Netflix.
Controlled chaos.
Yes, maybe uncontrolled. Who knows?
Which I'm fine with too. I love both versions.
Who knows? All right, so the future is going to be a lot of fun. Let's talk about the immediate future real quick, though. Let's circle back to the War Games match, because I got one more point that I want to make before we make our prediction in the match. I'm bringing this picture back up on our YouTube channel. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, if you're not, just bear with me as I give this example here. You look at Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman makes his return It's past Friday on SmackDown. Everybody's excited. Everybody is happy that Paul Heyman is back. But Andy, there was something different about Paul Heyman. As you're looking at him on the YouTube channel there, some people are saying, "Oh, Heyman dropped a little bit of weight." Okay. Heyman's a little more tan. Okay.
He hit that spray tan hard, buddy.
He definitely did. That is accurate. But those aren't the two things that I want to point out, Andy. Andy, look what he's wearing.
Yep.
Paul Heyman, and every time we have seen him on television, is a full-blown suit and tie. Every single time. Except Friday. Andy, what's he wearing? A black blazer, a red t-shirt underneath, and a red pocket square. Andy, who does that look like?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Solo Sikoa. Now, some people that are looking at this on our YouTube channel or listening on podcast are going to say, "Oh, well, a t-shirt under a suit jacket, that's normal nowadays." Yes, Andy, I agree. It is normal. But I'm going to bring up exactly what I said last week, and it's straight from Paul Heyman's mouth. Every frame of video shot in the Bloodline storyline means something. Everything counts, as Sam Roberts says. Andy, that counts. I don't know exactly what it means, but it counts.
Yeah. I caught that too as soon as it came out. I got the feeling of a little Solo early tribal chief days in him. My thing is, it makes no sense to me if he's the one that brings Punk into this team for him to turn on Roman. Like I as of right now, and you may be able to lay out the argument for it, but I don't see a logical reason why he would turn on both Punk and Roman at the same time. Unless again, this all comes back to a Rock return at War Games, and it's all a big alignment and everything else. But again, I don't see that necessarily happening. So I think this might be the tease of it and a slow burn to it.
Yes, I agree.
But
I agree.
again, it's one of the first things I noticed as soon as it came out. I noticed the spray tan first because it was popping definitely in picture. And then I was like, oh, he's got the red on and the black on. He looks a lot like Solo. He's just missing the chain is all he was missing. And
Could you imagine if he would have added a chain to that? Oh my gosh. The only argument that I can lay out for you that makes it, because I agree, it does not, especially with Punk in the scenario now. If Punk wasn't there, it would be clear as day. I would put a stamp that he is turning on Roman Reigns at War Games, like 100%. But with Punk there, it makes it very doubtful. So I think the only reason he would turn on Roman is to make the Solo match feel more important. We talk all the time about how Solo doesn't stack up to Roman. It's Jacob that we want to see against Roman, not Solo. Okay. If we notice that and other fans notice that, don't you think Triple H and those guys probably know that too? So how are they going to make it more important? They put Heyman on Solo's side. And again, maybe it's a bigger picture with The Rock. I don't think it clears up at War Games because I think you have to get Punk out of the way. I don't, again, like I said a minute ago, I don't know what the status is going to be of Heyman Punk beyond War Games, but let's say, Andy, that the OG Bloodline wins War Games. The next step in the feud is Roman has to get the Ula follow back. So Saturday night's main event, or maybe Royal Rumble, is Roman Solo. And that's where we can get the Heyman turn. Not saying that Roman never gets the Ula follow back, because eventually we have to have the match again, and Roman has to get it back in some way, shape, or form. Or maybe he wins the match, but Heyman turns after the match, and Rock comes out. I don't know how to book it, I haven't thought that far ahead. That's the one logical thing that I can think of as to why Heyman would turn on Roman and go with Solo / and or Rock.
Yeah, I get that and I can see it. I honestly don't know if we get another Roman Solo one-on-one match.
Like, we haven't gotten one yet.
Yeah, I know. I don't know if we necessarily need one. Like
no. We
because
have to have one. We gotta have one.
Here's what I'll say.
Okay.
I think Roman winning the Ulafala happens at WrestleMania against Rock. Like, I could see that potentially happening. I could see a scenario where post War Games, Solo Rock comes out and helps the new Bloodline win or whatever, and Solo removes the Ulafala from himself and puts it on the Rock. And now the Rock is the tribal chief, head of the table. Maybe at Saturday Night Main Event, you can do Roman Solo one-on-one, whatever, and then you kind of build from there. I hate the idea of turning Paul Heyman just to make Roman Solo feel bigger. Like, at that point, the match shouldn't really, like, the match is going to be what it's going to be, hype-wise.
Sure. Yep.
And so just don't even worry about pulling the trigger on that. However, the more we kind of talked about it, Rock showing up makes a lot of sense with Punk involved as well. Not because of everything that happened in the past. Mm-hmm. But if you remember the press conference, Rock or Punk is the one that said, I would punch Rock right in the mouth live on with a mic. And who's the one person that stopped and made eye contact with Punk as soon as he said it? It was Rock. Yeah. They made eye contact right as soon as he said it. So there's still some. I don't think we're done with Punk Rock yet as a feud. Maybe we don't get a match or something. But there's going to be another interaction between the two of them. If he shows up at the end of War Games, it adds even more to that. But I hate the idea of turning Paul Heyman against Roman to make a match feel bigger when the match is going to be what it is anyway.
Sure.
And so that's why if we have to do Roman Solo, which I agree, we need one match out of it, have it happen at Saturday Night Main Event and just get it done with, have it over, and then move forward. But it's not, honestly, out of all the Bloodline members, I would rather, like, Solo is down there with Tongaloa in excitement of matches I want to see Roman have. Because they've made it really hard to care about Solo because everything else around him has overshadowed him in some way, shape, or form.
Man, we are on such opposite sides of the spectrum there. Like, I'm not saying that I really, really, really care about Solo Sikoa. I'm not saying he's must-see TV, but I certainly care about him more than you do, clearly. Having said that, I will say this. Don't know if our listeners or our viewers have had a chance to go back and listen to Chris Van Vliet's latest episode with Nick Aldis this past week. If you haven't, it is fantastic. Go listen to it. He references the Cody Rhodes match in Nashville that we were at. So that's a lot of fun. But my point of that was going to be, he talked about Triple H's style of booking. And you mentioning Punk and Rock made me think of what he said was, Triple H plans a lot of things long-term. And then he plans milestones of, we're going to try to work to get to this point. Like we've all speculated that he does. But what Aldis also said was that he drops nuggets here and there. So if you're paying attention, you'll pick up on it. And Aldis said it. He said, I've been in producer meetings. I'm a producer. I know these things. He said, sometimes they're dropping it there to just possibly revisit it down the road. It's not set in stone. So this Punk thing with him and Rock, yes, you're right. It could make sense. It could be referenced, but it might not. Who knows? Paul Heyman not wearing a tie, wearing the shirt, could be referenced. Could be not. We don't know.
Sammy tossing the phone on the couch. Like that,
Sammy tossing the phone on the couch. Could be referenced. Maybe not. Who knows? It's just a lot of fun to sit here and just say, what if, what if, what if, what if? But the biggest what if that I'm going to ask you right now is, who wins this match? What if Roman and Punk don't get along in this match. Where does Bronson Reed even fit in this match now that it's not Seth Rollins? Just, I don't know. I'm really excited. That's the official graphic, if I'm not mistaken, that you're seeing on your screen. So it's prediction time, Andy. Who wins this match? How does it happen?
Oh man. Going into it, I probably would have leaned OG Bloodline. And since everything has kind of happened and we get a clearer picture, I'm probably going to lean even further into OG Bloodline winning. I think there is going to be some tension between Roman and Punk. I think there is going to be some tension between probably Roman and the entire OG Bloodline. But I think it's going to be too much to overcome. I think the OG Bloodline walk out with the win. I think they're all going to be standing tall at the end of the night. Maybe that's where we get another Punk Roman face to face. Just a stare down between the two. Maybe they even, in a crazy world, maybe they even shake hands. They shake hands, or Heyman shakes hands or hugs both of them, or whatever the case is. But I do think the OG Bloodline do get the win.
I'm not exactly sure how it happens. There could be a Seth Rollins music hit at the end of the night. I don't know. But what I do know is I'm with you. The OG Bloodline wins this match. Going away. I'm not saying that it's not somewhat close, but I think we get especially, Andy, if this is a one-night reunion of these guys, it's a dominant win for this crew. I think Roman pins Solo, and that further drives the point that we need a singles match because he wants that Ulafala back. So I think Roman gets the pin here. I think the OG Bloodline wins. And it's a happy-go-lucky glory shot at the end of the night. Everybody goes home happy kind of thing. For
nobody's music
match.
hits and everybody loses their mind this year like they did last year.
I really don't think Rock will show up.
I don't either.
I think if it was Cody, then Rock was showing up. But like I said a few minutes ago, Punk's return is enough star power for this that I don't think we need Rock at the end. Having said that, I thought Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns teaming and Jimmy Uso coming back at Bad Blood, I thought that was plenty. And then friggin' Rock shows up. So who knows, man?
Yeah. I do want to get your another prediction on top of this prediction.
Oh,
okay. And one other thing. I'll start with the other thing. This also segment made me realize I need to see Punk versus Jacob Fatu. Just throwing that out there. My weekly. I need to see Jacob Fatu versus this week. It's Punk.
That list is getting real long.
It's getting real long. And two, what percentage of chance do you give Punk bleeding in this match? Because I think he's going into it with the old school War Games mindset.
Considering he's probably the only one that's going to bleed in this match, I would say well over 75%.
See, because I think that could be him and Jacob both bleed. Like, could you imagine
I could see
Jacob Fatu bleeding and just screaming angrily?
I need to see
it.
I could see that. All right. We appreciate you guys being with us. Thank you for checking out our YouTube channel. Again, if you haven't subscribed already, what are you waiting for? That subscribe button helps us so much. It doesn't cost you a thing. Over 75% of our listeners are not subscribed. Please, please, please do that. Hit the thumbs up on the video. Leave us a comment. Leave us your thoughts and your feedback and your questions. We try to get to each and every one of those. Andy, we're running a little long on this episode, but there's just so much to dive into with so many ways that we can go in this storyline. Let's talk about the Women's War Games match. As you see on your graphic on the YouTube channel, it is Liv Morgan, it is Raquel Rodriguez, Nia Jax, Tiffany Stratton, and Candice LeRae taking on the returning Rhea Ripley, Io Sky, Bianca Belair, Jade Cargill, and Naomi. But as Andy alluded to earlier, Jade Cargill was viciously attacked on Friday Night SmackDown this week. And I will go ahead and play spoiler, Andy, as I'm taking notes and watching SmackDown. As soon as this popped up, The first note that I wrote down was, well, Bailey's in the War Games match. And then the second SmackDown gets taped, and wouldn't you know it, Bailey is in the War Games match. So obviously we know that's a good replacement. She's been in what, 3, all the main roster women's War Games matches so far. So it's a fine replacement, not a big deal. The question then becomes, Andy, why did this happen? Who did it? What direction are we going in here?
Well, the simple answer would be probably Liv and Raquel. Like, that's the simple answer, is that they did it.
Of course.
The other likely answer would be Bailey.
Okay.
For everything that's happened.
Okay.
But I really like the idea of Naomi being the one that turned on Jade and is going to turn on Bianca at some point and probably turn on Bailey.
Okay.
I think she has been playing the background for a reason. The last couple of, since she returned, really, and that could be to build to this moment. I also think this moment right here is going to really start the breakup between Jade and Bianca. And so I think it's all going to kind of play into that as we move forward. But if I was taking my long shot, I would say it's probably Naomi. But if I was a betting man, I would probably say the simple and safe answer would be Liv and Raquel.
So wait a minute, let me get this straight. I think all of those are very, very plausible cases. But if you just said that this is going to start the build for the feud of Bianca and Jade, why can't this be Bianca? And the example that I will give, you know exactly where I'm going with this. Shawn Michaels, Triple H, 2002, the parking lot attack. Shawn Michaels shows up the next week, says he has security footage. It's grainy. It clears up. Who attacked him? Triple H did. And Triple H says, you're right, Shawn. I did it because you're weak. You're nothing without me. Blah, 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 blah. And we've seen, Andy, how Triple H has recycled some storylines.
Yeah.
Why not this one? Because Bianca was in the parking lot. Bianca got in the ambulance. And I'm sure next week she's going to do something like, I'm going to find out who did this, blah, 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 blah. And here we go.
Yeah. I think she could be an answer. I don't think they're going to turn Bianca heel, though. Like, I don't think she's the one that they're going to turn heel, which means that she probably is the one that they're going to turn heel, because it's a thing you never see coming. But I don't know. The motivation I don't get if Bianca is the one that did this first. I don't see the reason why. And maybe they could come up with one. Maybe they'll find one.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why I don't really think she is the culprit in this situation. I think there's a scenario where she is, and if she is, then I'm fine with it. I'm ready to roll with it. But I just don't see her. I think the downfall between the two of them comes more of Jade being upset because Bianca let this happen to her. And like the last couple of weeks, she's been getting beat up more and more because Bianca is not doing what she said she was going to do. Or she's not there to help her, or this, that, and the other. And so it becomes an ego trip for Jade rather than Bianca turning on Jade herself.
I just feel like, and maybe this is just me because I've never really been a Bianca fan. I have nothing against her personally. She's incredibly athletic. She connects well with the fans. I've never been a huge Bianca fan. So maybe me saying this is because of that. I just feel like that she's lost some of her momentum that she once had. Maybe not as popular as she once was. And I just feel like a little bit of a change is needed for her. We've seen a little more of an edge with the Street Profits, and it's sort of made them feel like a big deal. And I only say that because she's married to Montez Ford and she was aligned with him at one time. So maybe we do that again. Maybe I know they have BFAB, but I don't know. I think just a change for Bianca would help a whole lot. Again, not saying that they'll do it. That's just how I would book it. One more thing for this women's match before we get our predictions. Man, the pop that Rhea Ripley got on SmackDown. Holy crap, dude. That was insane. I don't think anybody expected her to show up. Made it all the more fun when she did, man.
Yeah. I don't think there's any question that she is the most over woman on the roster. She might be the most over person on the roster right now. She is, I mean, every time her music hits, the crowd just goes absolutely insane.
Huge.
For her. You get, and I'm not the Attitude Era kid, so that's fine. You can tell me if I'm wrong. You get a lot of Austin coming to the ring and beating the crap out of people and leaving people laying with her when she comes out to the ring. Like that music hits.
Yep, I can see
people
it.
go crazy and she clears the ring. Like that's what she is great at doing. And she's intimidating as is. I did not realize how much more intimidating she is with that mask on. Like she looks kind of like Batman running down to the ring, ready to just beat up some fools, and I love it.
She looks like a mix between Batman and Penguin, honestly.
Yeah.
Like
Stick was more Penguin.
That's very true. Very true. All right, let's make a prediction on this women's War Games match again. The graphic that you're seeing on your screen has Jade Cargill. It's actually Bailey. An official graphic hasn't been made yet, and I didn't want to take time to make one. So, but anyway, prediction for this match. Who you got?
My prediction is that this is more of a toss-up than the other one is.
Oh, okay. I agree with that.
I think the addition of Bailey makes this very interesting, which is why I don't think the good guys get the win. I think the heels get the win. The part I don't know is whether, how, if they are going to do it, how Tiffany Stratton cashes in. Because I can absolutely see it happening. I can see it happening during the match. But they're both on her team, so I don't know how that plays. And if she leaves, then they get disqualified. So I don't know how that works. I could see it post-match as well, which if it happens post-match, then them winning kind of seems weird. But I'm going to stick to my guns. I'm going to stick to my gut. I do think the heels get the win. I do think Liv might get the pin on Rhea and just kind of continue that story going forward. But I'm not as confident in this one.
Yeah, I can see it going either way too, man. I really can. I think it would be interesting. You brought up the point that Tiffany cashing in during the match. What if she tries to cash in and somebody else on the other team wins the championship? Like, what if she tries to cash in and Rhea pins Liv and wins the championship?
I didn't even think that scenario. That would be that would make me wish Chelsea Green was in this match and had the briefcase, because that would be the greatest thing to happen to her if she did that.
I know. I think because it's an interesting dynamic because both women's champions are in this match. Typically, we would see the women's War Games match, and then we'd probably see a women's championship match in addition, but they're both already in the War Games match. So that takes away a match possibility. We're talking about only 3 confirmed so far. Man, if I had to make a pick, I'm going to say that the heels win this match and the cash-in happens afterwards. I just don't know exactly how the cash-in happens or who it happens on. I think if you're wanting to continue this Liv Rhea thing, it has to be Nia Jax. I don't know, though. I don't know. We'll have to see. I think this match kicks off the show, and that's your way to really set the tone for the night as you get the surprise cash in. I think this is just the perfect place for it because both champions are involved.
Yeah, I completely agree. And if you don't cash in here, then you don't really know what you're doing with the briefcase, storyline wise. So this is your perfect opportunity. Yep.
Completely agree. And we sort of said that after Crown Jewel as well, when she said she was going to cash in when both champions were involved. And now we have War Games. It's like, okay, you found another spot and you better do it. Okay. Let's go to the men's World Heavyweight Championship match. Gunther defending the title against Damian Priest. Andy, before we get predictions on this match, because we've seen this match before, we haven't really seen anything new with this feud that we didn't see around SummerSlam time. Damian Priest is more of a baby face now. He's more popular now, but we still haven't seen a whole lot different. What I want to ask you, though, is if you're watching on YouTube, you see this moment from Monday Night Raw this past week. Damian Priest was signing some things backstage. Gunther decides to attack him from behind, but it's Damian Priest that leaves Gunther laying. And the speculation online all week has been how weak this spot made Gunther look. And people were like, this is just awful. Why would he sneak attack and then him get laid out? He's the champion. He's blah, 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 whatever. What's your take on that? What did you think of the way this played out?
Yeah. I'm not a huge fan of it. I think world champions should be booked really strong, and especially when they're Gunther. I think they should be booked really, really strong.
Sure.
I think it was intended not to make him look as weak as it was, but to make Damian look. I think it was intended to make Damian look strong, and it ended up having a negative effect on Gunther more than anything else. So I don't read a lot into it. I think it was just a misstep, but I don't think it's like an indication of something.
Sure, I don't either. Like I think it was just. I think you're right. We were trying to make Damian look strong. And I don't think it means there's no hidden meaning here. I think that's one thing that if we're not careful, Andy, that we can really get wrapped up in this Triple H era of booking is thinking that every little thing has meaning and just driving ourselves crazy trying to think of what the meaning is rather than just enjoying what's on our TV. And if we pick up on something, great. But otherwise, just enjoying it for what it is, because the wrestling product as a whole is in a much better place than it was 3 years ago. And we just need to enjoy it for what it is. So this has been a fine build, a fine revisit of this feud from SummerSlam. I'll go ahead and tell you right now, I don't think Priest picks up the win. I think Gunther retains his championship here. I think this is just a way to build Gunther towards maybe a big match at the Royal Rumble. I don't think you get a big Gunther match on Saturday night's main events if Cody has a big match, which I assume he will, because Cody's not on the Survivor Series card, which we'll talk about in just a second. But I think Gunther picks up the win here. What do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Gunther walks out with the win. I wouldn't be shocked if he doesn't walk out with a pretty convincing win. I'm not saying he's going to squash Priest or anything like that, but I think he's going to leave no doubt in anybody's mind that he is the world champ and he's the dominant world champ right now. So that's how I lean towards it. And I think that's probably how it's going to play out with this match, at least.
Yeah, I think so too. I mentioned Cody Rhodes. We talked about Cody and Kevin just a few minutes ago on the show. They're not on Survivor Series as of right now. If that happens on Monday or Friday, then so be it. We have a great match. But I would assume, Andy, we get something with them on this show. This would be the third pay-per-view in a row that Cody Rhodes has not defended the WWE Championship. But I would assume we're going to get something. That Cody's going to get impatient. He's going to come call KO out. Kevin's going to come out. They're going to brawl. Maybe Randy shows up. We have to get something between these two on this show, right? Even if it's not a match, it'll be something.
Probably. I think that's the best case scenario for them, because I agree. I think it's something needs to happen on this. I did not really realize that Cody hadn't defended the title in 3 pay-per-views. Maybe that's just because he shows up week to week and he's there every week, so he gets a pass for it. But I agree. Like, I think something has to happen on this show between the two of them, whether it's a pull apart brawl, whether, Kevin Owens attacks Cody Rhodes again in the parking lot or the backstage area or whatever. Something has to happen on the show between the two of them.
Yep, I agree. All right, Andy, we have 3 confirmed matches. Anything that you want to throw out, predict that might get added to the show? I mean, you would think, because SmackDown was taped, that it would be a Monday Night Raw match that gets added to the show. We don't know that for sure, but it's very possible. If you had to pick a match or 2, normally we have 5 on a pay-per-view. What do you think?
Probably the one that I would say most likely gets added would be Braun Breaker versus Sheamus, probably versus Ludwig Kaiser for the IC title. I think that would be the most likely scenario to be added. I think it's too soon because I know, spoiler alert, Shinsuke wrestles this week on SmackDown.
Oh, that's right.
I think it's still too early to do Shinsuke versus LA Knight.
Agreed.
So I don't know when you actually do that match, or for the US title. I would probably lean to this being a 4-match card, possibly 5 at the fit. Like, I think if it is 5, then I think we get the triple threat IC title match and then Cody KO for the WWE Championship. But I don't think that one's going to happen. So I think we just have a 4-match card and a segment.
I think it's I lean towards the Braun Breaker match as well. I'll put it that way. I think we have a Cody KO segment. I think the other match is the traditional Survivor Series 10-person mixed tag between the Wyatt Six and the Final Testament. I think that could get added. The reason I say that, Andy, is because the Final Testament haven't had a pay-per-view spot since WrestleMania. The Wyatt Six haven't had a pay-per-view spot, period. Oh. And we have a 3-match card. It sets up for a traditional Survivor Series match, even though there's women involved. I think it's a perfect place to put them in there, whether it's a popcorn spot or not. Like, let's just have them in there, you know? I think it's a chance to get them on the show.
No, I agree. I think it's a great one to have on there. I think it has more intrigue going into it than a Braun Breaker match would.
Agreed. I agree.
So I'm all for it. Plus, like you said, the Wyatt Six have not had a pay-per-view match yet, which is crazy. But I think this is a great spot for it. And I think it's a great way to build to a potential Uncle Howdy versus Karrion Kross at Saturday night's main event. Like, I think that's a great way to build to that as well.
I agree with that. All right. As we get ready to wrap up, thank you guys for being with us. We appreciate it. If you're on our YouTube channel and you haven't subscribed already, what in the world are you waiting for? Please make sure that you do that. We mentioned our friends over at Sports Wire Radio earlier. Let's mention our friends over at the Wrestling Society Network, the WSN. You can check them out. Their app is available on Roku, on Fire Stick, and on Amazon and on Apple, all the places. It's a great app. The website is also a great resource for wrestling content, all kinds of stuff for you to check out there. They're a great partner of ours, and we thank them so much for welcoming us into their family. Go check out their stuff, WSN, the Wrestling Society Network. Andy, I want to end on this. It's a topic that I've been wanting to get to for 2 weeks now, and we've just had a lot of content and not a lot of time to get it in, but I want to get it in here. Sort of out of place with Survivor Series and everything that's going on, but that's fine. We don't talk nearly any AEW on this show, but something intriguing happened 2 weeks ago on Dynamite that I want to bring up. We had Adam Cole wrestling Malachi Black, which I texted you and said, what in the world are we doing here? Like, why is this not on a pay-per-view? This was on numerous NXT pay-per-views. And come to find out, Adam Cole wins the match. Not only does he win the match, Andy, he wins it clean. He kicks out of a black mass, and then they embrace at the end of the match. Lots of rumors floating around about the status of Malachi Black in AEW. Is his contract running out? Some say he tried to get out of his deal, I think it was last year, and he got rejected. So what are your just overall thoughts as far as that goes, with what to make of that situation, what we saw on Dynamite, and just Malachi Black in general?
Yeah, it's a weird situation, I feel like. And I feel like it's not the first time that we have seen a quote unquote kind of send off for Malachi Black in AEW. Contractually, I don't know when his contract runs up, because I think he just signed an extension like a year or two ago, something like that.
I don't remember when it was. I know. I feel like there was something that came out. I don't know if they're always so secretive with injury, and then
Yeah.
they randomly say they add injury time or what. So I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. So I don't think he leaves for WWE anytime soon. I think he's in AEW for some time being. He wrestled at Full Gear. And so I don't necessarily see him being in WWE anytime soon. That being said, I do think whenever his contract comes up, I do think he goes back. Like I do think he goes back to WWE. I don't think he stays in AEW. Um, he is one of those guys that just post Cody Rhodes feud, and you could probably blame the Cody Rhodes feud for some of this. He's just never really gotten an opportunity like a lot of people thought he would.
Yep.
Now he's over with the crowd. The crowd loves him. Every time his music comes out, they love him. They love Brody King. They love Buddy. They love all of them. But I don't know what the disconnect between Tony Khan and Malachi Black is. But I do think it comes to whenever his contract comes up. I do think it comes to an end, and I kind of hate that for him because I think he had a lot of hopes for AEW. But I do think he would fit in really well with this new WWE system under Triple H.
This is not a shot at AEW. A lot of people, including you, might think that because I'm not a huge AEW fan, but it just seems like that's another ex WWE wrestler that has gone there and it's not worked out like we all thought it would, and I don't know what the disconnect is there. I don't know if it's fans get tired of them super quick or Tony Khan signs them just to stick it to WWE like Eric Bischoff did back in the day. I don't know. I don't have any insight on that. It just seems like that's a pattern that hasn't been really fixed. You know what I mean? Some guys hit. You could argue that most don't. Again, not going to go down a rabbit hole there. But the rabbit hole that I do want to go down, Andy, is you said that Malachi Black you think would fit under this new regime with Triple H if he comes back to WWE. I don't think he does fit in WWE. And the reason I say that is, that I love Malachi Black as a wrestler, and I think his character is incredible and his storytelling is amazing. But I feel like we already have his kind of character in WWE with the Wyatts, with Karrion Kross, now with Shinsuke doing this darker side of Shinsuke. I just don't know that he'll fit. I'm afraid he'll get lost in the shuffle. Obviously, the cream rises to the top, as the Macho Man says. So he would be fine, but I tend to believe he might have more success on the indies, building his own character, sort of like Matt Cardona has done, and been able to freely tell the stories the way that he wants to, and just sort of go at his own pace. Do you see any of that at all? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I kind of see that, but and this is no disrespect to Karrion Kross because I'm probably a bigger Karrion Kross fan than most people are. I think he does a better job at Karrion Kross's character than Karrion Kross does.
That is very true. Yes, I agree with that.
I think he also connects with the audience better than some other guys do. Because, spoiler alert, if you like the kind of characters that are like that, I think an Uncle Howdy Malachi Black feud would be fantastic.
Sure.
I think it would be a lot of fun to see something like that. I think you could do a lot with it, especially if you actually get a House of Black in WWE. Like you get Malachi Black and a couple other guys. Maybe, Buddy Matthews comes back. Maybe Brody King comes over. Maybe that's where the Lucha Brothers come into play whenever they go to WWE. I think that could play a part into it. But I think he would do a fantastic job in WWE more so than some of these other characters because he's the kind of guy that I find believable in a feud with Uncle Howdy and with Karrion Kross, and I find believable fighting Cody Rhodes for the WWE Championship at the same time. So I think he molds both very well.
Do you think that Malachi could have had more success in AEW had they given him the world title?
Probably not, to be real honest with you. Probably not. Maybe not with the world title, maybe with a different title. He just was not in a lot of prominent feuds. He was not in a lot of big time feuds. And I think that was part of the problem was he, outside of the Cody feud, I don't know of another really big feud that he was a part of. I mean, even with like a John Moxley, even with a Bryan Danielson, even with like, Malachi Black versus Edge and stuff like that. Like there's a couple of directions they could go with it, and it never really happened.
It's interesting. It's very interesting that like he started at the top, like immediately with Cody Rhodes at the top, and then it's like, where do you go from there? If you start at the top, the only place to go is down. So I don't know. Just very interesting to see where this plays out with Malachi over the next, not weeks, months, year, perhaps. Who knows? Yeah. We'll have to see. But keep it locked in right here to Squared Circle Radio. We're going to tell you everything that we know and everything that we think. Make sure you're subscribed to the show on the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Make sure you're following the show on whatever podcast platform that you might be listening on. Like the video. That's that thumbs up button that helps the algorithm. Drop us a comment, a question. We'll get to all those. We do our best to get to every one of those. So make sure you do that. But that's going to wrap up this edition of Squared Circle Radio. Andy, any thoughts to leave our listeners with as we sign off ahead of this Saturday's War Games?
Not really. Just it's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be an interesting show. I think a lot could happen, and it's going to be a wild ride to see it. I'm hoping to be back home in time to watch it because coming from Buffalo, New York, we'll actually be coming from Lexington. Because we're making a pit stop to go watch the worst Kentucky football team in a long time play Louisville, so that'll be fun.
Lord help you.
And like 37-degree weather too, so it's gonna be a lot of fun. But I'm hoping to get home in time to watch it. But I think it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely going to be a lot of fun. I'm with you. I'll be on the road on Saturday as well, so hopefully I'll get back home in time. All that to say, there will not be a live post show on Saturday night. We normally love to do that, but because of the holiday and travel, it's just not going to work out. So keep it tuned in. Next Monday, we'll be back on our live regular schedule, I believe. So make sure that you keep it locked in. Again, we apologize for not being live this week like we normally are. But again, holidays, travel, sometimes we got to make some pivots. But we're still bringing you our awesome content, or at least we think it's awesome. We hope you think it's awesome as well. If you do think it's awesome, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. That's the Young Buck Andy York. My name is Chris Belcher. This has been another edition of Squared Circle Radio. We will catch you guys down the road.